All right, if we need to find the measure of a missing side length of a triangle, we need to use Pythagorean theorem. This is not the same as finding the missing angle. We know that angles add up to 180 degrees, and we would just, add our known angles and subtract it from 180 to find a missing angle. That's what we measure with a protractor. In this case, I want the side lengths. I want to know how long the missing side is, like if I used a ruler. So in this case, they're telling us that the measure of one of the legs, so the legs make the L shape, and they are A and B. They make a L for legs. They also make that right angle. And so when we know the legs, that's when we're using the addition Pythagorean theorem. If I am missing one of the legs, that's when I will use subtraction. So let's see what that looks like. So in this case, I know my A and B are going to be 5 and 12. And so I just plug that into our Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So 5 squared, then we plug it in. We square our numbers. 5 squared, that just means 5 times 5, which is 25, plus 12 squared, which is 144. Okay, now we add when we're trying to find the hypotenuse. That's the side across from the right angle. And in this case, that's what I'm doing. So 25 plus 144 gives me 169 equals C squared. And then the last, because that's just C squared, but that doesn't give us the length of the leg. So we need that last step, which is to square root 169, which means what number times itself equals 169. And that number is going to be 13. So the measure of this missing side length is 13. And that makes sense because the hypotenuse is always going to be the longest side of a right triangle. Okay? So let's look at a word problem, because a lot of times Pythagorean theorem isn't the hardest part. It's the word problem stuff that trips people up the most. All right, so let's draw this picture, because I always say, when in doubt, draw it out, because sometimes the words get confusing. So I have a 25-foot ladder leaning. So anytime something is leaning, it's not straight up and down, it's leaning. So it's at an angle. And this is 25 feet. Notice I am labeling things that I know is leaning up against my brick wall. So there's my brick wall. The base of the ladder, base meaning bottom, the bottom of the ladder is 5 feet from the base of the wall. So from here to here is 5 feet. How high up on the wall does the top of the ladder reach? So here's my top of the ladder, here's my wall. So that means this is my unknown. Now, so I see my right angle is here, which means this is my L shape, which means I'm missing I'm missing one of the legs. I'm missing part of the L, which means this is going to be a subtraction Pythagorean theorem. So going through my steps, I am still going to square my side length. So I have 5 squared, and I have 25 squared. So 5 squared is 25. 25 squared is 625. But in this case, since I am missing the leg length, I'm going to subtract. I'm going to subtract, so I get 600. And then my last step is always to square root. Okay, now sometimes they let you leave it as just a square root. Sometimes we need to actually approximate the answer. So I would get 24.49. So this is approximately, and this is my approximate symbol, 24.49. Or if they want you to round it to the nearest tenths, that would be 24.5.